Hey guys, how's it going? This is Gamer1745 here, of course. Just sort of a quick note at the start of this. As you may have noticed if you're a regular viewer, channel checker, outer, content's not coming out as routine as it normally has been. I wouldn't call this burnout because I'm really looking forward to playing things. It just, and I know that I knew that I have been sort of been doing maximum effort, and because of the Thanksgiving holiday and other sort of things, I had been working before that without any real cushion. Meaning, I'd like to have like 2 or 3 days worth of content ready to go beforehand, so that hey, if something comes up, which things often do, it still comes out and you don't notice. But yeah, and I'm sort of made the conscious effort when sort of missed some stuff that I'm not going to try right now to hurry up to get everything out to keep you from noticing. I'm just gonna let it happen that a few days things will be missed. Part of it, of course, is I didn't do the live stream on Saturday, so I don't have Hearts of Iron 4 content, so I'm sort of moving the other content, often slithering game stuff, sort of to the noon slot, and I still need to make an upload. Actually have the episodes made for the Baldur's Gate series, but need to upload them and make the thumbnails for them. So yeah, so I'm just sort of letting all that just sort of it's going to happen. But if things get missed, like we missed yesterday's, I'm making it about 4 hours after yesterday's scheduled normal Hearts of Iron 3 take. I'm making what you're seeing now the day after's content. So yeah, instead of trying to rush it out and get it out, just letting this flow a little bit more. Sorry if it's disrupting your what you want to see. This guy here who is off wake. So that's just a quick note. Oh well, we're still hitting a few people going to here. So let's see if we can move to convoy raiding passive. See if we cover that better. Stuff going to the Philippines, I guess. And here now, on board, invasion, there. Now, we presumably know, though theoretically, I guess, more than theoretically, it could have moved. There's still a big fleet here, so we're going to prepare, I think, a naval invasion here. If need be, we will air supply it, and a drive to here. What that will do is, probably after one more major strike on the Big Islands, port strike, we will see about putting the sort of big combined multiple fleets off here, and drive for Hilo to drive out that fleet into the waiting trap. And I was also suggested to do a naval landing here to support this battle. And I could. Maybe I should. But doesn't that, to some degree, yeah, I trust me, I get a combined arms thing. Naval landing, airborne landing, blah, 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 blah. But, yeah, sort of the point is, at least in my mind, is to nah, I don't want to do that. That's sort of what I was looking to see. Organization levels is to do some of this with airborne landings. And if you look at the classic, shall we say, American or Allied use of airborne operations for invasions, particularly, they were done as a blocking force for reinforcements. Well, garrison unit there, these guys here, I don't know how much reinforcements. We're not looking at panzer divisions or something like that rushing in to deal with things. So I don't know. We're gonna put these guys on board, not those ships. These ships, if we can. Maybe it's, there we go. Come down to Singapore. Rebase. Well, I guess we already had some armored units. So we'll see. It's obviously going to take a little while to get there. Now these guys, oh, do we have a bunch more? They're up here. Yeah. These guys we are looking at, oh, let's put, invasion command, just so that we can find them if we just generally want to look. We are looking at, for an upcoming invasion of the Philippines. This is 3 divisions worth of good invasion type troops. We have at least a couple more divisions here of good invasion troops, and some cavalry that we may use. We have a few more divisions, including a Marine division. Well, support the attack. Won't hurt you and help get that done. So, we'll let these guys get repaired a little bit more, make sure we have enough stuff going to repair. Okay, we'll let these guys get more organized, more repaired. We are overstretching this, but I'm hoping at least some of the units are getting repair levels going on. Okay, broadcasting advance, very good. Yep, we'll shut that down for now. Cruiser anti-aircraft systems, very go. Very good. Which are grayed out. Yeah, heavy cruiser armor. Oh, and we have one more slot at least. Yeah, good 19%. Air defense, soft attack, air attack. Yeah, I guess so. Well, we could sort of use new or more fighter groups around. Attach you to Fighter Command. Fighter Com, and we will, oh, let's check out who we have here. Don't know if that really helps. Air Command, Air Operations. The trait. Okay, well, no, we don't need to go that low in skill. Well, let's get somebody with night fighting skills, even though we, generally speaking, aren't using these as night fighter types. We still 20 units here, 10 can repair. 9, 3, 8. Okay, they can operate from there. Okay, let's bombard here. Ground attack. This is supposed to be an easy one here because we are going after headquarters units, even though they're in the mountains. And it looks like our air attacks did the job. Stop here. Okay. Go to. We've lost a motor torpedo boat. Big deal. We destroyed a destroyer flotilla. I'm still not sure whether they've fully figured out whether those are supposed to be flotillas or individual destroyers. There's been different things and I'm not sure. Okay, HMS Furious, a carrier. Britain is lost off here to our group, presumably this group here. Very good. Do we know who took it out? Ship sunk. Now you got the Queen Elizabeth. They got the Furious. Unmuru. Okay. Good going, guys. Taking out the British here. Oh, we also don't need all these guys here either, so, yeah. Yeah. They're also supposed to be able to be part of the, Philippines invasion. I've been pulling more and more units of the police from the center of China, and I'm just sort of looking at the revolt risk here, which is all sort of nicely in the yellow here at 1.6, and it's not changing for a concentration. So it looks like so long as we keep at least like some of these type of guys, yeah, that's a good one. I keep thinking I'm sending this to somewhere because it has armored cars, which makes it a little better division. But some of the more straight horse units, these guys, as just beat down, and these are really slow, so sort of a reserve division here. Fascist militia to deal with revolts, kind of thing. Okay, when they'll be happening. Veteran Navy, so we've got that. Fought enough battles now. Organization regain rate plus 5%, naval organization plus 10%. Officer recruitment plus 15%. So that is helping us keep that very nice and high. Okay, reconnaissance aircraft designs have advanced. Okay, and we will stop that, which of course helps with all of that. And standard infantry advance, branch advance, upgrade advance, blah 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 blah. Okay, as you can see, benefits. And I believe that is, yes, grayed out. Okay. So right now we are well ahead of what Japan was at this any time during World War II. Again, I go back to Gun Jesus from Forgotten Weapons, who's often talking about, who recently did a series of episodes on the Thompson submachine gun, and often mentioned, well, this is World War I technology, blah, 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 and had interviewed, I forget his name, another guy who, bit of an older guy, not like World War II veteran, but was a young kid in the post-World War II era, knew a bunch, and then later went on to do a lot of firearms training and operations overseas and things. You know, and sort of like, you know, the Thompson's good, but it is, you know, the line is, Thompson's good, but it's not this holy grail of submachine guns, and it's really more of a World War I technology, not a World War II technology. And yeah, I'm not disagreeing with any, you know, technical thing he's saying. He's Gun Jesus. He's right. Not just because he's Gun Jesus, but he's Gun Jesus because he has done so much of the research and he has really long hair. Yeah, but you look at so much of the weapons are World War I technology. You know, Britain throughout the whole conflict uses the Enfield rifle. Now, if you look at sort of mid-war rework of the Enfield rifle, is a massive simplification of the weapon, particularly in production simplification. And that they had wanted to, before the start of World War I, was trying to come up with what sort of the P-14 that the U.S. rechambers and calls the P-17, and is working towards this sort of superior, more modern rifle. But World War I breaks out and they don't, because, you know, they go with what they've got. And so by World War II, you know, they have so much of the Enfields around, so they don't want to do a new caliber. You know, and this is the post-World War I world where military budgets are small. And, like I say, don't want to do a new military caliber, and don't want to do a whole production of a new firearm, you know, completely new, even if it is in the same caliber. Because some of the stuff they were looking at prior to World War I was a new caliber, you know, a bit smaller bullet, going a bit faster kind of thing, flatter trajectory than the Enfield round. The Enfield round is a bit of an arcing round, if I remember correctly from my ballistic stuff, a bit more than some of the flatter weapons of the period, because it's sort of one of the early cartridges out. Not the earliest, but one of the early ones out, so it has some of its deficiencies in doing so. But so, you know, there is no budgetary appetite for coming up with a new rifle post World War II, and then of course World War II comes out, and they're realizing, unlike World War I, they're realizing World War II is coming, but still trying to build a whole new rifle system for Britain is just sort of beyond the scope of what Britain can practically do. Oh, well, sure, it could do it, but oh, well, let's stop all those Spitfires and Hurricane development and production or something. You know, choices need to be made. Not everywhere is the U.S., and the U.S. is only really the U.S. once it's mobilizing, because before it's mobilizing, the U.S. is in a massive depression. So it being in the Great Depression, it isn't working like it's in an industrial juggernaut that it is at the time. I mean, during the Depression, it was an industrial juggernaut, and we can look at the various trade wars, which we're sort of facing one now with China, and to a point, to a point, I agree with Trump's trade war with China. Some of his other trade war stuff, I don't know. Hi, Vincent. You often watch some of these. I don't know if you're watching this series, but you're commenting on the other series. Is often talking about protectionism and whatnot. And there, how do I put this? A nation needs to be concerned about its workforce and its population. Okay, it does. A nation is not some theoretical entity. It is not some libertarians' what theory on what government should be, because the hardcore libertarianists are as much utopianists as anybody else. Yes, the hardcore libertarianists knows that there will always be criminals out there. They're not like the social redesignists, whether they're socialists or other people, social redesignist philosophies that are going to somehow make a better mankind, in which criminality will be more or less erased, and you can sort of have this Star Trek kind of world in which you can, put somebody in a booth and erase their criminal thoughts, and they all are now peace-loving, wonderful personalities. They're not that. So they know you need a police force. But libertarians have other sorts of issues in their utopianist views on the one side, and then we have the sort of globalist views. And you have a lot of quote-unquote American companies that are no longer American companies. They're globalist companies. They're more worried because they don't feel that their situation in America is under threat. They, in the sense of their market shares and whatnot. So if they make their product in China, in India, in Vietnam, in Germany, in Canada, and sell it to Americans, is just as fine as making it in America and selling it to Americans. They think they have the American market sewn up. So they're always looking outside to increase the outside of America's market. And they see all these potential customers out there. But how do I put this? You can spiral America. Look at where we started here, the Great Depression, spiral America into a situation in which it is no longer going to be your primary market of selling your widgets, your toasters, your whatever you want to call it. And not all products that these companies make are going to be effectively marketable in other parts of the world. A good example of that is Apple. Apple is a status product. It has become a status product. It has, well, it's had in the past, and I think it's somewhat waned, sort of a reputation around some of the Adobe products to sort of be the artistic designer's computer, if you will, for various, whether it's video editing or photo editing or whatever. It's had sort of that, but it's become as much more status symbol, cult symbol, jewelry symbol. And so it's never going to break into so many phone markets, because that's now sort of the old Apple computer is still a thing. And but it's now the the pocket computer, the tablet. Those two things are pocket meaning the cell phone or whatever. I mean, it's digitally connected, but it's really more of a pocket computer than it is a phone anymore. We still euphemistically call it a phone because it can still do that as one of its minor functions. I look at it as such. And so, yeah, Taiwan, we see here. Yeah, there's people in Taiwan that have the money to buy the Apple, and I'm sure there's going to sell a few. But it's never going to become a dominant situation in the Taiwan market. I just don't believe so, because of things, cultural and otherwise. It's just not going to do so. Other companies are going to be able to be much more global and international. And so the problem with protectionists is they're trying to protect a particular job often. Okay. You know, buggy wheels, or, wagon wheels, the wooden spoked metal rimmed wagon wheel maker's job. Well, sometimes these jobs just go away because obviously I'm using an archaic thing that there right now is a need for wagon wheel makers, but it's infinitesimally small. I remember when I was doing reenacting, we wanted to get a cannon. Cannons are nice display pieces put in front of your encampment display, and would be nice to have, and it's sort of cool to fire. And modern cannon barrels, of the 18th century type, something, cast iron barrels or whatever, they're achievable in the affordable thing. They're not, we never did get one, but we were seriously looking at getting one. We would have liked one and whatnot. And the barrel itself isn't that hard to get because it's, a cast iron thing that, you do it sort of right. You don't overdo the caliber inside of it so that it's pretty safe to shoot. And most often the case, you're shooting blanks, meaning you're just some wadding in there so it goes boom, so there's no real hardly pressure in it. So yeah, you can get something like that pretty cheap. But the rest of the artillery piece is sort of expensive. And the most sort of expensive and hardest to get thing is the artillery carriage wheels, because they're not wagon wheels. You may think they're wagon wheels, but they're not. They're designed to take impacts a lot more than a wagon wheel. They are actually sort of cone shape, if you will. Obviously they're round at one end, but instead of being sort of flat, plain wagon wheel, they are sort of coned, in towards the gun on. Obviously you can flip them around to either side, but in towards the gun to be better sprung. Because when you pulled an artillery piece, generally behind horses and whatever, often across rough terrain, you needed, generally speaking, because obviously there are some big, heavy wagons, but generally thicker wheels. And by doing that sort of manufacture technique, they would be sort of shock absorbing, and instead of cracking and breaking, is sort of the idea. And so we were advised that sure, yes, for most of your use, and if you weren't going to be really trying to load for high pressure, long range, shooting a cannonball out of a thing, and this wasn't going to be a big cannon, because actually the thing that we were reenacting, and that's why it was sort of affordable. Most of the Jacobite artillery was very small artillery pieces, things that the whole wagon wheel might not, and the whole cannon might not come up above your hips, where real artillery gets much larger. And so we were just looking at a small gun, appropriate to the period. But wagon wheels are, can sort of be substituted in there, and so you could get somebody who does for hobbyists, enthusiasts, reenactors, or whatever, make some wagon wheels, and that would be okay, but they won't be properly artillery wheels. So yeah, there's still a market for all of that, but that isn't going to employ very many people. Get back on topic. So protecting a particular job is quite honestly a bad thing. Horse dung removers, because there used to be a lot of horse dung in the streets, because a lot of wagons were pulled by horses. Well, those jobs go away, but new jobs appear. But the idea is, so protecting American, or pick your country, talking to somebody, I think, in Croatia, about their need for jobs and protectionism. protecting jobs in Croatia or wherever is an important thing. But at least in the first world, and I know not all of you viewers are in the first world, in the first world, we are looking at AI robotics coming very soon. Well, it's already here, but coming much more appropriately. Old robotics are one of two things. Either a robot that does a very specific task over and over and does so until it breaks. So either a mechanical part fails or something puts in it, is put in its way and it jams. Okay. So it does that. Or we're looking at a robotic situation, shall we say, that is human operated, in which the tasks that it does are overseen and maybe 100% directed by a human. So that still takes human intervention. I was looking at a video a very distant relative of mine made, who's on his farm. I've never met him. He's sort of a distant cousin of my cousin's, if you can sort of get that. So theoretically he's my cousin, but very distantly. But as shown, he's making a real nice sort of GoPro and multiple angles of some of these industrialized tractors he's using on his farm, and that you could program the tractor that he's using and hit start and get out of the tractor, and the tractor will just drive and plow the field. Well, they don't do that because it will work that way. What they do is they program it and then sit in the driver's seat and monitor what's going on, because they'll change the depth of the plows or whatever as it's going across the field and some other stuff. But as the video was showing, you don't see his hands on the wheels because it is using GPS to plow certain lines, back and forth. But these are huge stuff, and as an uncle of mine was saying, that what his father as a farmer, what one of these tractors will plow in a single pass across the farm is what his father would plow in a day. This isn't 1 hour's plowing for a day. It's what he would have plowed one of the passes for the day's plowing. Now does it in, I don't know, 10 minutes or something. One sort of going across a large portion of this field. The width of these things, just one pass does a day's worth of work in the olden days. And this isn't that olden of a days. This is sort of now of 1930 something or 1920 something in the American farm setup. So so much of the farm jobs have gone away, but there still needs to be, to do it right, to do it for the best results, you still often need a human oversight to the operation. Well, we're getting more and more beyond that, into where we now have driverless trucks that still mostly have a driver sitting in them just in case things go haywire, because it's in the testing thing. Driverless trucks that are going to go across the American highways, and they're going to get to facilities, and there's going to be operator-less, meaning there's no operator on them, either remotely or in it, forklifts that are going to remove the pallets and park the pallets in the factory, in the warehouses that may be attached to a factory or something, depending on what they're moving. It may be to stores. And so we're going to get more and more into the AI controlled robotics. So you don't even have a person needing to sit around and oversee it. But as I said in the first type of robotics, things work until they break. Well, you're going to need at some stage repair, programming, you're going to still need human interaction. So a lot of truck driving jobs at some point in America are going to go away. Depending on the types of the loads and the types of things, you may still need better judgment, but still you just have slap-on barcode, printed out barcode stickers on pallets, and so that the computerized forklift will just roll up to the pallet, read the barcode, and go, oh, this is supposed to be in warehouse number 3 in row 5, stack 2. So it'll pick that up and navigate. Doesn't need to follow a pre-programmed course because it'll have various sensors, including visual, but I can also do a radar type thing just in case, and navigate to where it's supposed to go. So you don't need a programmer telling, giving it its path. It finds its own path. And if it's blocked, whether it's blocked by 3 other forklifts in its way, while one forklift is, picking up or moving something, or whether it's spilled other things that, look like, oh, I can't drive across that easily. Let's take a different path. And it figures out a different path and goes and does that. It's going to figure all these things out. So jobs are going to go away. So this is where you get to proper protectionism, because a nation state replaces the earlier tribal loyalties. I don't see, well, I see, particularly in America, because the nation state I'm thinking, that's why I'm pausing here. Well, before 1860, there was very little American nationalism. Very little. It was much, much, much more state nationalism, shall we say. The state that you were from was much more important than the idea of the United States. So when you were fighting a foreign enemy, it was threatening your state, even if your state was a landlocked state somewhere in the United States, Kentucky or something, and you're fighting the British, a sea power. Your state was still threatened indirectly, because trade goes down rivers and eventually goes out to sea. So it was a collective security arrangement. But there was still very little, I'm an American. No, I'm a Kentuckian. I'm a Virginian. That kind of thing was much more important. You really, and before 1860, it's these United States of America. After 1865, it's the United States of America. They go from plural to single. Okay. But even within that, you still have the whole Confederacy, which are not on board, emotionally speaking. And so you still have nationalism in America has always been much more tenuous than other parts of the world. And even as the Confederate thing waned, and we definitely see significant rise in nationalism for World War I and nationalism for World War II. World War II is really the sort of mixing of people from everywhere into military operations, much more so. You can see that in a lot of the propaganda. So national identity becomes much more, well, it's still sort of too big of a thing, and because of various reasons, including America's own history, again, we can go back, whether it's the Confederacy, the expansion west, or situations in which does sort of stem out of the Confederacy, the Jim Crow laws and various racism in America's past, as well as since the 19th century and ongoing to this day. So this isn't a today's phenomenon. large groups of new peoples coming into America that have different loyalties. America is breaking up more and more into tribes. Some of this has been expressed in particularly football, but also baseball tribes. Loyalties based on that. Not quite to the extent that you saw chariot racing tribes in Rome. Rome could be broken down into chariot racing tribes, especially in the latter parts of the Roman Empire. Bet you didn't know some of that. I sound like one of my old professors who was always on the bet you didn't know, but I bet you most of you didn't know that there was a big tribal thing in Rome, in that who did you support? Some of it was sort of neighborhood and industry, which is often sort of neighborhood. Some of it was just you supported certain teams, and don't really remember too much more of the details than that, but that was a thing. So we have a certain tribalism in America, and now it's often there's various factions, and of course you can, Democrat, Republican, Trump supporter, Hillary supporter, and it's really being pushed even more so by the left with its intersectionality and groups of oppression and various tribal things. So if you're moving into internationalism, you're going to see a more rise of tribalism, which can be a very bad and divisive thing, especially when you do not have defined areas of control for the tribe. Borders, fences. If it's intermixed, who controls what city, which tribe? Now, again, this same uncle was joking, when he and his wife go back to the family farm and home in Kansas, they double the number of Democrats in the area. They go from 2 to 4, and I think he's almost just about right in that particular region, county or whatever. That it is a huge and has always been a very strong Republican stronghold. So it is clear in that area the tribe of Republican rules the local government, the city council or whatever, county council or county whatever. And so, that's clear. So you don't have the conflict, because my uncle doesn't go there to cause trouble. And of course, if he were voting from there, he would vote his way, but he knows that it isn't going to win. But if you have a contested area, you get these really harsh tribal conflicts that people get really, really upset over. Well, that's because nationalism in America has for a long time, since World War II, trying to been attacked. Really, I would say maybe it just coincides with or whatever, but really along with the Vietnam War and this sort of anti-American tribalism or anti-American views that have pushed this. So America is, and I don't mean this in the leftist hateful sense, is an empire, because it is a huge 50-country thing. And so you have problems with what is the national identity of America. You keep going, this is not America. America doesn't tear gas women and children coming across the border. Except for exactly 6 years to the day, literally 6 years I think it was to the day earlier, Obama's border control people tear gassed a couple of hundred, not 1,000 or more or whatever, a couple of hundred people trying to storm the American border. Oh, and they routinely, in smaller incidences under Obama every few months, have, because when you work for a federal agency and you fire off something like tear gas, you write a report. Okay, you fire off a bullet, in any sort of police department. And not at the, well, I don't even know if at the range you may fire, you know, an official police range. I fired 50 shots or something. 50 rounds were expended. But whenever outside of a range, you write a report for every bullet. You write for every bullet shot. Now maybe 3 bullets in one report, but there's a report covered for every bullet use. And so, just firing tear gas, it's a little different than pepper spray. With out of the, because when you say tear gas, it may be pepper spray, but out of the little spray canister, you got to write a report. So they're constantly, every couple of months in that same area, we're using tear gas under Obama. And these same people that are going after Trump for Trump's department for deciding to use it are blaming Trump and how evil it is. Well, they may not have liked that it happened under Obama, but they probably didn't know that it happened under Obama because the press wasn't trying to hammer Obama over it. So it didn't get reported. So I will grant that they didn't necessarily like it, and that it happened, and I will grant that they may have not known it. But it's a thing, and it's being used in a tribal weaponry sense. So, nationalism, protecting of jobs. States that have a definable culture, definable boundaries, and unlike China, big, which is, I would put as an empire, someplace like Taiwan is, a seeable community. You need to protect the people that you're responsible for. And so they need jobs. So you can take several paths to achieving this. But to protect particular jobs can be a... you don't need to stay here because we're no longer going after Hong Kong. Okay, see, sometimes I'll let these guys go. Okay, come back down to here. Oh, can you get down to here? No. Come down to here. Rebase. And we could use you as shore bombardment, maybe. That could be useful. Do we have somebody closer that we'd want to send? There now? Okay. We can send these guys here now. Yeah, just movement orders. Okay, you're here. We have Rangoon. You guys come across the border. I'm looking for other resources we want to try to grab. Nothing really. You guys, you can hit from 2 directions. You support the attack. Oh good, you guys have finally made it here. Yes, jungle. Okay. Specialized infantry, because I think these guys are involved in the attack on here. So hopefully... Oh! Pact concluded. Saudi Arabia has been accepted into the Axis. Very, very good for us. Probably Germany may call them in, which would be a stupid thing to do, but may do so. Just because I think it'll get overrun. And just it being in the Axis means that it will... Okay, we no longer need to support an attack on a province there, so come back to defend here. Okay, we lost a transport here. Well, we're coming for you. Movement order. And economies, unlike what maybe economists want to make you think, are tricky things because they shift and change. I know a reasonable number of you are one flavor or another of socialist. And I put that down mostly to two things. One, your indoctrination. There are a lot of forces out there that indoctrinate people towards socialism. And two, an idealism that believe that okay, we see somebody based there. So let's come up here. We've got 3 full carriers with full carrier groups. To deal with whatever might be there. I'm suspecting it won't be a massive fleet. Okay, well, we're still being hit. Okay, good. We've taken out a what looks to be torpedo, boot, Jaeger, Schmiel. Dutch probably? Picked up from the Dutch Netherlands into British service when they acquired, you know, inherit whatever out here, maybe? Good. We'll come back out here. So you guys are still operating well there, good. Okay, good, we're starting to see some positive impact in the battle. And, oh, pause. Ah, out here, okay, we've taken out 2 motor torpedo boats. That is good, and what was sort of expected. Take out something, whatever. More motor torpedo boats, good. Twin engine transport plane prototype, good. Has we're gonna stop that way too far in advance because I'm still thinking on this. Sorry if I'm going back to you. You guys, of course, that have been around know that I use this as a not a well, sometimes it is, but not just a info dump or but as a serious sort of contemplative discussion on history, politics, society, and whatnot. So I'm still thinking on it. A national government has a duty to its people. Okay? On a large scale, because we can go small scale, a single individual can organize himself up, or can be organized by another individual up, okay? That is quite appropriate. So if you were to, let's say, look at, oh, I don't know, Liechtenstein, Monaco, or some, you know, micro state, San Marcos or something in Italy, Andorra or wherever, you can have a single person or single committee organize up the economy, you know, and do so quite well and efficiently. But the larger you get, and to the scale of most countries, you cannot effectively organize the economy. There is one caveat. If there is a single-minded goal, okay, a war is a single-minded goal. You can also have, you know, under Mao at times, and again, I'm sorry if I'm getting some of the detail wrong, but, you know, he does single-minded goals. Everyone get out and produce steel. So you had literally backyard furnaces, smelting processes, because that's all it really is you just need sort of, I don't know, brick and earth and whatever to try to heat up iron enough, you know, raw iron ore to smelt it into sort of bar iron, to then try to get it hot enough and add in some carbon to make steel. And so they do this process of the single-minded goal to the exclusion of growing food. So people starve. And I'm sure I'm getting some of the details wrong here, but so you can try to have a single-minded goal other than war. So like, let's just say you believe that our planet is doomed. And so the single-minded goal is to build a spaceship to take some of us to another planet. And maybe you determine that Mars is good enough because there's just going to be this big asteroid thing smashing into Earth, and all we can do is get some people and some long-term energy type source, you know, to have habitats, you know, to recycle water, to, you know, be a perpetual limited society on Mars. Okay. You know, and so everybody's going to be dead anyways. So you can do this, you know, if they stay here. So you can do this single-minded goal to get off the planet. Or you might go, hey, the sun's going to go supernova, and so we've got to get to another star. So we have to build this big spaceship, huge spaceship, that'll hold hundreds or thousands of people, and it'll take 10 generations to get to another star, but it's going to go there. And when it gets there, it's going to look to see if there's a planet, and if not, it's going to go on to another planet. And so generation after generation is going to live on this ship as it vagabonds around the galaxy looking for possible inhabitable planets. Okay, yeah, so if you're going to have a single-minded goal, you can do it. But if you're not going to have a single-minded goal, you know, and you can only do a single-minded goal for so long because eventually everything else stops working. You know, if everything is going into ammunition shells, the rest of your economy starts to collapse after a while. You can't keep up war forever. Eventually it'll collapse. You just hope your enemy's economy collapses before your economy collapses if there is no battlefield victory in sight. That kind of thing. Now, so, on a large-scale economy, the best mechanism for good economics is capitalism. I'm sorry, socialists. Now, I know some socialists out there are quote-unquote socialist light, or really sort of are actually sort of, they've learned to think of it as a dirty word, but are actually sort of capitalists who like capitalism but want capitalism to support a bunch of social welfare programs, okay? And that is sort of that's a distinction that I sometimes get lost in, primarily not because I don't believe it exists for a significant group of people out there, is I believe that that group is infiltrated by core socialists, okay? So there is a group out there that wants a capitalist economy that supports social welfare programs, but also within that generally political parties and activist groups, there are true socialists. Socialists want the means of production, whether it be farmland or factories or other things, to be owned collectively by the people through the mechanisms of the state. They believe the state is owned by the people, and the state owns the means of production. So sure, you might be able to have a lemonade stand that is your own, and you get to keep, after taxes, the money, and maybe very local businesses are your own. Again, after very large taxes, you get to keep what you make. They may believe that they allow, in their main socialist economy, meaning all major factories, all major food production is all owned and controlled by the state. So there's a socialist economy, that they would allow a layer of capitalist interaction to happen. I don't know whether that's above it or below it or alongside it or whatever, that they may allow that. So it isn't a pure communist state-controlled world, but it is a primarily socialist. And so since I can't, because they lie, socialists lie. See, unlike the right, whether you want to call it the and again, fascism is an idea of the left, but it is it masks itself to some degree and has some elements of the right. But fascists are clear what they want. They want fascism. They're very clear about it. You know it in their propaganda. They want fascism. Okay? So they don't lie. Free market capitalists, I'm trying to define that differently than, say, Chinese state capitalists, but free market capitalists. They tell you what they want. Free market capitalism. Nationalists, okay, some of those people may be fascists. I'm talking historically, it's hardcore nationalist ideology, not just people that want the nation state. Because, Teddy Roosevelt defined nationalism as working for the better benefit of, that an individual believes the I don't think I can get the exact quote, but a nationalist believes in the betterment of the nation before himself, meaning he puts the nation before himself. That is Teddy Roosevelt's version of nationalism, or who a nationalist is. So if you put the good of the nation before the good of yourself, you are a nationalist. So you can be a social nationalist. I don't want to confuse it with the Nazi thing. So you can be a socialist who is a nationalist. You can also be a socialist who, if you're coming very much out of the Karl Marx and Engels tradition, is an internationalist. But you can be a social nationalist. Purely looking out for the benefits of your people. And so, but if we look at sort of the nationalists of Franco, yes, and Franco, his nationalism was a coalition group. So, of course, it had phalangists in there, which are sort of, they're fascist, but they're sort of fascist light, at least some of the phalangist ideologies. They're not full-bore Mussolini fascism, but they're fascist light. So you have the fascists in there. You have the monarchists in there. You have the what do you want to call them? The clericalists. People that support the church and the church owning land and church involvement in government and the state and education and whatever. So you have so his nationalists had this coalition of peoples, and landowners and factory owners and industrialists, if you want to go there. So Franco oversaw in his nationalist government a coalition elements, and you go to other places in which you have a right-wing pragmatic party, say Marie Le Pen, whose father was clearly much more of a fascist and an anti-Semite. I don't know if he was really a Nazi, but he was an anti-Semite. Meaning, I don't know that he really believed in all of the core Nazi gobbledygook, but he was an anti-Semite and a fascist of a fashion. And because I disagree with generally we're both, American conservative, American Republicans with my father, but I don't agree with all that my father believes or thinks. So I can easily see Marie Le Pen not supporting all that her father supports or supported. But I don't know whether she's just covering up and does secretly support her father's positions, and or do some of her supporters, and I don't mean just some guy in a basement tweeting support for Marie Le Pen. I mean people running for the French Parliament or local elected officials that are, I'm talking significant supporters. There may be people that are sort of on the more ugly right, shall we say. And so you get some of that, but mostly on the right, they really mean what they say, mostly, and it's sort of the, and especially pre-World War II, they mean what they say. On the left, you don't get that. You get this: say what we think we as far left as we can go and still get elected. So you have this. A nation has its duty to its people. So, and capitalism is the so far best known to man a way to organize an economy, which is to some degree a disorganized economy, because life is messy. There, some central planner is going to cause a lot of harm. He may do good, but he's going to cause a lot of harm. And so capitalism is the best way to go about it. But, well, as a core tenet of capitalism, a core tenet of capitalism is, and I want to repeat this, a core tenet of capitalism is businesses will go out of business and people will lose their job. Okay? Businesses will go out of business, and people will lose their job. That is a core and desirable, not a, oh, well, it's an unfortunate side effect. No, it is a good thing that people go out and lose their job. Because they want them to lose their job because they make wagon wheels. And we now need automobile wheels. And the core tenet of capitalism is that you will lose your job and then go get another job. Now, this is unlike a lot of people's economies, and unlike a lot of the American economy that has been going on. If you look at GM and a lot of these people who had their one job, they worked that job their life, they got their pension, and that was their life. And an economist I was recently talking about, that is, in America, that's going away. You won't have a job for more than 4 or 5 years. Either because you will have a better job opportunity, so you're working at an okay job, some new job opportunity is out there, you apply for a better job, you go to a better job, so you leave your job. Others will be that your truck driving job has gone away because there's now a computer doing it, or your car driving job as a taxi driver or an Uber driver goes away because there's now a computer doing it. You go get another job. So you won't have these lifetime single job situations, because the not just surface level economy is changing, but fundamentally society is changing, and so people will need to literally adapt, not grow a new finger, adapt, that sense, but maybe in brain biology. And this is, a lot of people, a lot of adults are all complaining about kids and their little devices, and it's rewiring their brains, and they're absolutely right. What we're doing in these games are rewiring your brains, but I don't know that it's a bad rewiring of your brain. Especially if you can then learn to be productive, not just how many tweets you send out a day, But do you build, like when I mod, do you build something? Or when I make a video, this is being productive because some of you, a few of you out there in the world, find this interesting enough to watch. So I am being productive in doing this. And so, and you can also, this can be, as we look at either you watching this video or playing my mod Third Reich events, you're learning. So, but also playing just Hearts of Iron, you're learning. You're learning skills. You're learning history. So just playing it to a degree is being productive because you're learning. You're learning skills. Will those skills be useful in making money? I don't know. But you are learning skills. So economies are going to be changing. Now, so it is fine and good that people lose their job. Partially, GM is announcing some factories are going away. And Trump is all upset about it. And Trump is threatening things. Well, that's sort of Trump's way, and everybody just sort of knows it. But also we have to look at, okay, and he's right. They need jobs. The factories, the cars that they're selling, that they're currently making, aren't selling well, so they're going away. So the jobs are going to go away. Now, a lot of the American car manufacturers are more and more talking about the idea that they're no longer going to make cars. They're only going to make trucks, because that's the only thing that they're really selling in America. They're selling trucks. Trucks have become a sort of just a standard car kind of thing, and most of the people I don't see hardly ever using them as trucks. Now, if you go into farmlands, oh, I'm sure, but I'm talking about here in greater Los Angeles. There's various reasons for it. Some are social, some are believed in greater protection from accidents and other things, but that's a whole nother thing. So cars may be going away. So car production jobs, the people need to lose their jobs. And of course, I feel bad for somebody losing their job. But that needs to happen. Now, what the idea of capitalism is that there's something new to replace it. But in transition periods, which like I've been talking about here today, you transition from one sort of economy to another economy. Some people are just, because of age and other capabilities, aren't just going to make the transition. Even if there's jobs out there, they're just not going to successfully make the transition. Maybe their brains aren't wired in the right way. Not that they're not smart. We're not talking smarts. We're talking about the way brains are wired. So, oh, good. Oh, good. So we've got that. Good. We're here. No orders. And we now have shore bombardment helping us out. Good. That was the idea. So that we have massive changing economies. Now, we don't want people to starve. We would prefer people not to lose their homes. And I say prefer because if, say, a factory location is in a bad location for modern conditions, meaning if it's in a state with high union regulations and high corporate taxes, you know, some old GM factory, and you have a state like Texas that has no income tax for individuals, and such, that you, and no union requirements by law, that you very well may be shutting down a factory in a union state and moving the factory to Texas. And so there will be a natural downsizing of the economy because of decisions people have made there. Protect our union jobs. blah, 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 blah. Oh, okay, the business is going out of business. But we're protecting our union jobs. Yeah, but the factory's going away. And so your house is going away because there isn't going to be the economy to support your house. There just isn't. If you have a town that originally you needed 20 people working on a particular farm, that you now do it with one person, and that has occasional, and I don't mean large amounts of fruit pickers, those are more and more going away as you get robots who can look at a fruit, figure out that it's a fruit, look at it and tell if it's ripe, and then pick it and walk on. You've seen those dog-like robots that just saw a video of pretending to pull a sleigh or something from MIT or someplace like that. You know, those, you know, the ones you've seen them open the doors on YouTube videos or whatever. Those robots will be able to look at fruit, know to come and put certain amount of pressure, pick, and pull the fruit. Okay? Those robots are future fruit pickers. We don't need Mexicans. We don't need poor people to pick fruit once those things can be and I don't know how expensive those are to make, but probably pretty expensive in the laboratory. But once you're stamping out all of the parts in a dedicated factory, one after the other, and you do that rapidly, I don't think that they're going to be that expensive to make. And so all those are future fruit pickers, because they will identify a fruit or a vegetable or whatever, and will somehow be able to determine ripeness, and then pull it off the vine and put it in a basket. When the basket is full, whether that's via weight or know that it's picked off 40 of the fruit, it's going to then take it and dump it in somewhere else. And so we're going to get automated farms even more. But so a farm that used to take 20 people now takes one person. In the transition period, they built a factory there. So a lot of the people that moved from farm working went to factory working. Now that the factory at first went from needing 1,000 employees to needing 300 employees. Now that the factory is going away, may just be moving, but because it needs to be rebuilt significantly to build a different type of automobile or something, instead of rebuilding it in the same location, they might as well just tear it down, reuse the parts that can be reused in building the new version of the factory, if any of the parts, and build it in a new location. So yeah, your house may go away. Now maybe you've been there long enough, you fully own the house and you can retire there, fine. But you may very well get economies that in certain areas the houses may go away and people will lose their homes. And yeah, it's not nice, but maybe they'll get a new home in Texas that's better, a job that's better in Texas. That is the idea of capitalism, is that you will lose your job and you will either get a better job or a new job, because sometimes it's not your choice. You know, better jobs are more your choice. But like I say, we may go through a period of massive unemployment. How best to handle that? People talk about the dignity of work, and there is something very much to do that. I believe retirement kills a lot of people. Okay? I really believe retirement kills a lot of people. They lose their sense of purpose in life. Even though they really love to fish, and the first few days, weeks, or months after retiring, they're all about going fishing. But after a while, they really like to be productive. And there isn't a practical, productive thing for them to do. And so they don't know how to make a transition, either into a retirement situation or into a second career, one of the things that make working in the gun industry hard for so many people is there are a lot of retired people, gun enthusiasts who's gone through life doing something else, but now that they've retired and they have maybe enough to live on, maybe they'd like a little more, maybe they have plenty to live on, but they just would like to work in a gun shop a few days a week. There are many gun shops in America that are partially filled with people that, for economic reasons, they don't need jobs, and they're happy just to get a couple days, 2 or 3 days a week, doing a responsible job. You know, it's not just like a Walmart greeter who just stands there and says hi, and if you ask them where the bathing suits are because that's what you want to buy, and they could tell you it's on aisle 5, that they know the store. That's all they do. I'm talking about a real, trust me, if you're filling out the paperwork and you're doing all the stuff, even if it's a part-time job, working in a gun store is a very responsible job. They want a real responsible job, so they get that. Like I say, retirement kills a lot of men, particularly because that's the way men are organized. So you have unemployment is going to be a problem. So how do you handle that? I don't have a good answer for you. This is where, unlike a lot of ideologues on the right and the left, I don't have a good answer for you. I know capitalism is the best way to organize up an economy. That doesn't mean that capitalism always will meet every need of every nation at every moment. Okay? And you may need to segment certain elements of your economy outside of the capitalist system. Maybe for the US, maybe for the coming future at some point, the food economy. Not necessarily as a protectionist to protect farm workers or grocery store workers, as you may have noticed. I think it was Amazon, who has now maybe 2 stores that are test stores that have no employees other than some sort of manager or two to, if you need to do a return or some sort of, if you're having a problem. But basically they don't use in-store employees, and you're seeing a lot more grocery stores. They know they're having self-checkout counters set up, and so yeah, sure, a lot of grocery stores have an in-store bakery and have an in-store butchery, so that there's an actual butcher there. So yeah, there so long as you have a, and there is, because my grandfather owned a butcher store, who obviously was a butcher, so I know a bit about this. There are, you can do a lot of the meats as sort of prepackaged item. Butchering animals, I can see AI's getting, at least the basic elements of it, figuring out how to chop up the things and carve them up. It can do that, in time. It's going to take a lot of time. But so the butchers are going to be needed longer than some of the other stuff. But even once you get into the store itself, there is a certain value of having a butcher to interact with, to cut steaks the way you want it, and things like that. A little more customization. But their needs of them are going to be reduced. So it may not be, say, to protect America's food jobs entirely, but the idea of move the food economy outside of a capitalist economy so that food prices remain at a and I'm seeing this as I'm saying this at 2 levels. One, that for a national self-defense situation, you don't want too massive fluctuations in farm economies, because you don't want the farms to go out of business. Okay, you need future projection, future predictability. Okay, so that you can buy a new piece of farm equipment and know that you can pay it off over 10 years or whatever, and so you don't lose your farm, and so that farm machinery manufacturers and all this stuff. You need a stability system so that there isn't interruptions. As a national defense issue, you need to have secure foods. Okay, that's a national defense issue. On that hand, so you don't want to have the economy fall out of it. But conversely, you want to keep food cheap enough so that people don't have to worry about if they're losing their jobs. You don't have to worry about food. You know, paying for food. So, you know, you may want to pull that out. Now, of course, once you pull that out, it's very hard to put it back into the system because governments take over and people's livelihoods will be hurt once you change it. But like I say, I don't have a solution, and socialism is not the solution because we can see the problem. And there is a difference between regulations saying that, you know, you cannot charge more than X for a gallon of milk, say. But you will buy milk at X price. Or Y price, I should say. Now, Y may be lower than X, but you know, so that you will keep the dairy farmers in business, but you won't overprice milk for the American population. That is different than the government having government-owned farms, having government-owned milk processing plants, because you need to pasteurize it and whatnot, and government-owned trucks to move the milk between the farms and the plants, and between the plants and the you know, grocery stores. You know, having government-owned means of production of socialism. Okay, so that having the government own it and the government run it in that sense is a bad thing to do. And so you can say you will buy milk for Y, and milk will not commercially be sold for more than X, but you can sell it for less than X, and you can pay more than Y. You know, so maybe Y is a pretty low but sustainable level for milk production. And so long as the market isn't overly saturated, milk will be sold by farmers for more than Y. But without changing, and you can do different pricing in different parts of the US, but maybe you want to do a flat US price. And X may be reasonably high, but not high that it's hard to obtain for people, but just sort of, it ain't cheap, but it's not expensive either. It's just okay. But maybe most of the time you sell it for less than X. So maybe most of the time you're buying it for more than Y and you're selling it for less than X. But you put limitations on it to protect the industry so that you have a general idea, because at price X and below you will be selling Z amount of milk in the United States per year. You know, right around that. We know the consumption needs. If it goes up too high, milk as a component in pre-made and other made foods, because milk is used in making things, will get expensive and will drive other costs of other things up to make it hard to get, hard to use, or hard to afford. So use would go down if those other goes up too much. And if milk becomes expensive to buy it in a store, to buy a gallon of milk, you buy a quart of milk and put less on your cereal, drink a little less, have a little less, but you're still having some milk. And so milk usage would go down, that if it's below or if it's above X. So, but if you make sure that it doesn't go above X, but you also make sure that you're not selling it for below Y. And so now if people know that, but you don't make a requirement. See, here's the key thing in this idea. And this is sort of a mercantilist idea. This is mercantilism, or an element of mercantilism, or maybe it's one thing I looked up recently, a neo-mercantilism. Because the old mercantilism is sort of resources here, labor here, or something, or no, resources here, manufacture here, market here. So you dig the iron here, you send it to here to be manufactured into a product, and it's sold. The product is sold here, the market is here. That is sort of old style mercantilism. But neo-mercantilist idea, because they definitely had stuff, is not that the people who buy milk must buy any milk that shows up at Y or below. No, they only buy what they want to or need to buy. So if the farmer produces 100 gallons of milk, the milk person he sells it, the processor, the reseller, the whatever, may only want to buy 50 gallons. Okay. So just because he produces milk, and so the processor can't lower the price on it. Well, there's so much milk on the market, we'll just pay you half X and we'll take all that you got. No, we'll only, because since they can only buy it at X, or no, at Y, sorry, at Y, we'll buy it at Y and we'll only buy 50. Okay. So now of course a farmer can go and look at various, and big farming outfits, I think, can pasteurize their own milk, but there has to be certain distributions. When you get it in the Canadians, they're weird. They have milk in bags. Some places have it in cartons. Cartons more or less have disappeared for milk in America. It's now into plastic jugs of one sort or another. But you have to get it into the plastic jugs to get it into the market. Somebody's going to be doing that. Also, whether you're turning it into powdered milk or condensed milk to being used either in homes. Sometimes people actually, unlike myself, who actually make food from putting ingredients together as opposed to just heating it up. But if you're putting ingredients together in a factory or a restaurant, you may be buying condensed or powdered milk, or even just other milk, not powdered or condensed, but it doesn't need to be maybe so premium because it's going into food products. It's not a quality issue. It's more of a look, texture, and other things, and storage and whatnot. And of course you're buying it for cheeses, and you're buying milk to create cheeses and other things. So you can't. So the farmer can look around and go, hey, milk reseller, milk middleman, whatever you want to call them. How much milk can we get a contract for the next 5 years at a minimum you will buy from me? And so this way he knows that this factory, because they'll want a secured source, and he says, well, and I'll have that many milk cows to be able to milk and produce that much milk, and I'll so long as farming conditions are good, I'll be producing, so they can set up an idea of market expectations so that farmers know how many cows to have, in what regions, in what areas, and how much to produce. And obviously you can ship it around a lot, but have that set up and produce a relatively stable milk production in America. And so if they produce more because the cows are more productive, because they get more food and they produce more milk, or somebody decides to get more cows than needed, but offers, well, hey, I got, instead of 100 gallons, I got 120. Do you want to buy 120 gallons of milk? And they may go, yes, because there's a big demand on cheese and we're getting a lot of, there may be shifts of it, but they'll at least make a certain expectation. So This way you can have predictability, future predictability in farming, but that isn't capitalism. But neither is it particularly protectionism in the sense of keeping every dairy farmer from going out of business. Because maybe milk will be found to, on this modern society, to be contributing to global warming because it comes from cows, and so people start, not by government laws or regulations, but people start boycotting drinking of milk, and they decide they don't like milk chocolate. So, because, hey, burn the planet up, I want my milk chocolate, I'm sorry. But let's say people think that global warming is a bigger issue, and so they're going to boycott milk. So it may put the milk business out of business, but it won't be because of a price collapse, in the sense that and so that's sort of a mercantilist, and that solutions like that may be what's needed to deal with the coming major change in first world economies. Now, saying that, and this is one reason why, and it's why I sort of figured out, and maybe belatedly, maybe not so belatedly, why communism does so well in the third world, is that the Galapagos Islands are not that big. Those are huge. I don't even think there's that many of them either. Is that land is a finite source, and that in a non-industrialized farming society, farmers need an individual farmer needs a certain amount of land to produce enough for himself, and so he sees that as a fairness issue when there's a land owner who has a lot more of it, and that they see an economy in which them out with a plow on their own, not even with a farm animal, but them out with a plow on their own trying to farm, is a viable economic means of survival. Where if there's industrialized farming, he may realize that him on his own with a some sort of hose and whatnot out there trying to farm is just not a viable means of economic support, because when he shows up to the market with his carrots or his peppers or whatever, for what the industrialized farmer is selling them for is so little that he cannot survive. And so this is why communism has often had much more support in industrialized economies, in economies not just that don't have large industry in them, because you can have industrialized economies with zero industry in them, but that economy is entirely based on industrialized goods, meaning all of their pots and pans are made in a factory somewhere. No one is making them in their homes. No one's out there with a hammer hammering out pots, metal pot, fabricating metal pots in the local blacksmith shop for the community, so that they're living in an entirely industrialized economy, even though there may or may not be any industry. I'm thinking about like financial centers like, I don't know, Hong Kong or Singapore. I don't really think there's much industry in Singapore. I'm not saying there's zero factories, but it's not an industrialized. It's more of a trade-centered economy, a financial-centered economy. So communism, because of its zero-sum, communism is based upon zero-sum options, and economies are not zero-sum options in the industrialized world. This is where Marx gets it wrong. This is where socialism is wrong. It's just wrong. You see, that's part of the fundamental, some of the fundamental problems with Marxism. And I'm not talking Marxism in the sense of Leninist Marxism or Maoist Marxism as a political or specific economic structural situation. I'm talking Marxism as in his dialectics of economies and societies. he sees this as a zero-sum game, and it is not. It is not. Land itself is a zero-sum game on any significant scale. Yes, we could see a place like Singapore dumping enough stuff into the ocean to doubling its size, but Brazil is not going to get 10% of its size, even with the erosion of the not Himalayas, that's over in India and whatever, but the Andes mountain as it erodes and flows down the, the Amazon River Basin is not going to increase Brazil in 10% in size. You need a micro-state to maybe do that. So Brazil is only going to be Brazil's size unless it takes something from somebody else. But as I saying, food is no longer a problem for humanity, having enough food. There is plenty of food. Is there really a... Oh, no, okay. There's enough food to easily feed humanity. It is a problem of getting the food to where it is needed. It is an infrastructure problem. It is a food transportation problem, not a food production problem. We can easily wipe away any and all starvation in the planet from growing enough food. And the biggest problem with America giving away food is it destroys local food economies, because once the farmer can't sell any food because there's too much free food from America, he's out of business and now taking that free food from America. There may be options to produce other things. I don't know, produce opium to sell to America or something, but which has happened in places like Afghanistan and whatnot, but or to sell to China or some other place historically. So food is not a problem, and so since food isn't a problem for the populations, now maybe not everywhere can you produce, yes, I'm going to Japan specifically, can you produce enough food domestically for your population size on a practical situation? I do understand Japan's desire to protect its rice farmers. The problem with this Japan protecting its rice farmers, but Gamer, you've just been talking about protecting national interest in food and jobs. Yes, but I've also talked about the creative destruction of the jobs to move to other things, is that they're protecting small-scale rice farmers that have used small-scale industrialization on their farms. My understanding is that the farms are highly mechanized. The small, often single-person operated things that easily, well, maybe a bit heavy for a single person to pick up, but 2 or 3 people can pick up. Small motorized farm machinery kind of thing. The idea of protecting food production in Japan is a viable national goal, but the way Japan has been going about it is protecting of particular jobs, not just protecting the idea that we want to make sure a reasonable amount of rice is produced in Japan to feed the Japanese population, because things, wars, natural disasters, okay, let's say if we're relying upon Vietnam for Japan's rice production, because there is a lot of rice production in Vietnam. Well, let's just say, I don't know, China builds a bunch of dams and sends all the water going somewhere else, or enough of it, or there's a meteorite strikes in Vietnam and destroys its rice production, or I don't know, something happens, a civil war breaks out between North and South Vietnam. Nobody's ever heard of a war between North and South Vietnam, but maybe it might happen. Maybe this time the South will attack the North. I don't know. But that may go, the food productivity may go away, or it may be China just deciding to sink all ships because it is doing some sort of short of nuclear war against, trying to get Taiwan, and Japan is allied with the U.S., so they're sinking all ships out here, and so bringing in food across you know, through the South China Sea may become difficult. Okay, you know, whether it's political, natural disasters, or other things, I can see the need to produce food. But, and Japan is having a population problem, not enough people, population problem as opposed to too many people. But let's just say 30, 40 years from now, they've changed the idea that we're not having enough babies. They changed the part of it is economics. A major thing is economics, but it's also social, I believe, too. But some of the reasons why Japan is not having enough babies. But let's just say they're really successful in changing the situation of not having a replacement population, and enough to maintain it. They go for a population boom, and Japan goes to the point that it can't feed itself. Fine. But it can house itself, because even though it's largely uninhabitable easily, this picture sort of belies it's much rougher to inhabit. They live in apartments. They can dip population density. My understanding, population density of the world can fit here. You know, these two here. It can fit there. All standing on a flat piece of ground. So if you were to build apartments, you can fit easily the whole world there. Whole world. If we build a sort of Tokyo City type, flat density, high density, you know, 100, 200 story high apartment buildings, well built, we can easily house the entire world's population right here. Easily house the entire world's population here. So your nature freak fanatics, they might think of this. Instead of trying to reduce the world's population, which they want to do, to make it more sustainable. See, this is I know this has gone on to a long rant, and sorry about that if you didn't like this. That want to reduce the world's population to sustainable levels, make it sustainable levels. Well, okay. Let's think this out. To all of you sustainable level population people, and there's even some sort of monument that's made somewhere in America that sort of spells out some of this stuff, some of the BS. Okay, my understanding is all the world's population, if this was a flat area, could all immediately stand next to each other, you know, with you know, rubbing shoulders to each other on the big island of Hawaii if it was flat. Now, of course, you know, how are you going to get enough food, water, and move? You know, no, can't do that. Now, if you build this Tokyo City type mega city here, you could fit the world's population here. Now, a lot of people currently in the world don't want to live in an apartment building. Okay. You don't want to. They like living in the country. They like living somewhere else. But I'm not suggesting that the world needs to move here. But the world could move here. Now, unless you're also going to grow, have layers of habitation for food, which you could do, you can grow food somewhere else. But so you could probably, especially if you were to make apartment buildings growing, you know, levels of food with lights and stuff. So now energy becomes a situation. Well, where are you going to get the energy to say, if you're going to have an apartment building like structures, and on each floor you have food growing, and so you have lights, so you need energy for that. Where are you going to get the energy? Where do you think you could get the energy to do all that, people? You clean energy fanatics, where do you think you're going to get that clean energy? Has anybody figured out what I'm saying to them right now? Have you figured it out yet, people? Where are you going to get that energy? What are we looking at? What are we looking at? What are those waves? What are those waves of? Those waves. What is that? What are those waves that's covering 7/10 of the surface of this planet? Clean energy people who want to do solar, who want to do wind, who want to spend huge amounts of money on god-awful projects that barely produce any energy, including my state. And I was actually called on the phone for an interview process on this. And, you know, what did I think about the energy situation? And sort of by the time because it was actually done by a person, you probably, yeah, you know, they could tell that I'm sort of a Republican and didn't like all this clean energy stuff. And, well, do you have any, do you somewhat like, you know, they go through the whole thing. Do you have any comments that you want to say after this thing? And I go, yes. We have the greatest amount of clean energy available to us in here in California. I went on about it. What do we have waves of covering 7/10 of this planet? Hydrogen. The most common element in the galaxy as far as we know. Hydrogen. That is a practically endless source of energy out there. I'm not talking wave energy, not talking wind energy. Hydrogen. It burns 100% clean. It gives 0 greenhouse gases. Hydrogen. We have an unlimited, in a practical sense, an unlimited supply of hydrogen, people. Right now being stored in a very stable format of H2O, of water. You separate it out, and what do you need to create, to use hydrogen energy? You need something other than hydrogen. Oh, you need oxygen. To have fire to burn, you need the fuel, and you need oxygen. What's the other part of water? H2, H2, 2 hydrogen, 2, 1. Oh, oxygen. Of course, plants also create oxygen, too. So, and they take in greenhouse gases. But, yeah, oh, and our state, the state of California, the green state of California, has now contributed in the last few weeks more greenhouse gases, more pollution than all of the American automobiles for over a year in the last few days by our forest fires, if you don't realize how much junk we just put up in the air by our forest fires. Which, of course, there were no forest fires until man came along. That was man, you know, Smokey the Bear kept all the animals from ever lighting fires, and until man comes along and starts lighting forest fires. Oh, wait, maybe they happen via lightning strikes and other things. So that there's always been lots of greenhouse gases, as they want to say. Maybe they're a good thing. Maybe, because maybe without them we'd be freezing. I don't know. But even if you believe that burning coal and whatever else is a bad and evil thing, we have an endless amount, in a practical sense, of energy out here. Endless. And we can fit everybody into a mega city here. But hey, look, don't harp on just Hawaii. We could move down to New Zealand or something, and yeah, wreck the natural environment of New Zealand, but then we could turn the whole rest of the planet into a green nature preserve. And let's say you could have your apartment, and then either above or below your apartment there could be enough square footage of internal greenhouse to grow soy products or other food products. You know, rich people could have some cows or something, but you know, for steaks and whatnot. But we could move all of our food production and all of our living space of current humanity to New Zealand. Yeah, you may be going, it's impractical. Yeah, I know it's impractical. You know, just think what the religious wars are going to be like when we're all crammed into one place. But, yeah, we could do that, and we could let the entire rest of the world go back to nature. We could. I'm not suggesting we do so. So population and food and energy are not the issues that confront mankind. It's just that oil is cheaper right now in a practical sense than separating out hydrogen, and we have not, in the past, like say World War II, that was not practical to separate out enough hydrogen from water. I don't know if anybody did it in the laboratories back then. They may have. And it takes energy, but it takes more infrastructure to get hydrogen out there. So all you people out there promoting electric cars, they're not a bad thing, but I think I'm more in favor of internal combustion engines. I would just go with hydrogen-based cars. Yeah, I would go that path. So yeah, I mean, yeah, there's downsides we could talk, but there's ways around some of the downsides. Thinking cars blowing up, but yeah. And it was just the government that decided to go electric and not go hydrogen. I think it was maybe GM or somebody who was working on a hydrogen car during the beginning of the Obama administration or the end of the Bush administration. But the Obama government branch, when the GM bailout or something, was one of the companies, took the bailout, forced them to stop working on a hydrogen-based fleet car in favor of other stuff. So, yeah. Some of the stuff is government determined and paths as opposed to market determined. Again, remember, I say capitalism is the best way, and so long as oil is easier and cheaper to do, they're going to use oil. Once oil is no longer the easiest and cheapest method, either by artificial means, meaning laws that tax cars and or oil, sorry about that, cars that are now you know, that use gasoline have high taxes on them, or gasoline or other petrochemicals have artificially high taxes on them, and hydrogen doesn't. That would force a switch over in time, or simply running out of oil would push us into a hydrogen situation. But it'll happen someday. I truly do believe hydrogen will be the main fuel source, unless we get tokamaks or other sorts of fusion engines that just need, my understanding for fusion, unlike fission, but fusion can be run off of most solid matter. I may be wrong about it. Again, I'm not a scientist. Don't even play one on TV or YouTube. But yeah, again, so with all that stuff, nations need to protect its interests. Its interest in that society doesn't collapse because you're changing from one economy base to another economy base. So yeah, third world countries, and a few of you I know live in third world countries. I would still consider India a third world country. Hi Azads, if you're watching, yes, I consider your country a third world country. Not that there isn't great things going on in India, just the balance of the whole country taken as a total. Again, I'm a foreigner, never visited there. I may be wrong, but I do take India to be a third world country as a in total. That their economies will be changing, and to all economies over time will be changing, unless you're artificially doing protectionist situations, and then you get what happens in Japan. You could get, you know, Admiral Perry showing up with a fleet and the Meiji Restoration. So yeah, you know, eventually the rest of the world will knock on your door at some point. North Korea, you know, but for a time you can keep keep the rest of the world out if you so choose. This has gone on more than long enough. If you made it here, thank you. Love to hear your thoughts on it. Yeah, I'm gonna have to make a special thumbnail for this and whatnot. But thanks so much. See you next time, maybe with less rant.